In 1858, Senator Jefferson Davis of Mississippi suffered one of the many protracted illnesses that afflicted him throughout his life, and his doctor urged him to spend some time recuperating in a cooler climate. So a couple of weeks after Congress adjourned in mid-June, Davis, his wife Verena, and their 2 children set sail for New England. They spent 3 months in Maine, where they enjoyed the mild summer and early fall, and his health improved dramatically. Somewhat more surprisingly, Davis found himself in demand as a public speaker, giving at least 8 speeches, from impromptu remarks at sea on the 4th of July to a crowd of 5,000 at a Democratic rally in New York City during his return trip. He was awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from Bowdoin College, the alma mater of Franklin Pierce, whom Davis had served as Secretary of War, and he was even invited to speak in Boston's Faneuil Hall, which had often been a forum for abolitionist rallies. Here are a few excerpts from that speech. Countrymen, brethren, Democrats, most happy am I to meet you and to have received here renewed assurance of that which I have so long believed, that the pulsation of the democratic heart is the same in every parallel of latitude, on every meridian of longitude throughout the United States. If I were selecting a place where the advocate of strict construction of the Constitution, the extreme asserter of democratic state rights doctrine should go for his text, I would send him into the collections of your historical association. Instead of finding Boston a place where the records would teach only federalism, he would find here, in bounteous store, that sacred doctrine of state rights, which has been called the extreme and ultra opinion of the South. Having achieved your independence, having passed through the Confederation, you assented to the formation of our present constitutional union. You did not surrender your state sovereignty. Your fathers had sacrificed too much to claim as the reward of their trials that they should merely have a change of masters. And a change of masters it would have been had Massachusetts surrendered her state sovereignty to the central government and consented that that central government should have the power to coerce a state. But if this power does not exist, if this sovereignty has not been surrendered, then I say, who can deny the words of soberness and truth spoken by your candidate this evening when he has pled to you the cause of state independence and the right of every community to be the judge of its own domestic affairs? This is all we have ever asked, we of the South, I mean, for I stand before you, one of those who have been called the ultramen of the South, and I speak, therefore, for that class, and tell you that your candidate for governor has asserted tonight everything which we have claimed as a right and demanded as a duty resulting from the guarantees of the Constitution made for our mutual protection. In connection with the idea which I presented of the early sentiment of community independence, I will add the very striking fact that one of the colonies, about the time that they had resolved to unite for the purpose of achieving their independence, addressed the Colonial Congress to know in what condition they would be in the interval between their separation from the government of Great Britain and the establishment of the government of the colonies. The answer of the Colonial Congress was exactly that which might have been expected, exactly that which state rights democracy would answer today to such an inquiry, that they must take care of their domestic polity, that the Congress had nothing to do with it. If such sentiment continued, if it governed in every state, if representatives were chosen upon it, then your halls of legislation would not be disturbed about the question of the domestic concerns of the different states. The peace of the country would not be hazarded by the arraignment of the family relations of people over whom the government has no control. In harmony working together, in co-intelligence for the conservation of the interests of the country, in protection to the states and the development of the great ends for which the government was established, what effects might not be produced? As our government increased in expansion, it would increase in its beneficent influence upon the people. We should increase in fraternity, and it would be no longer a wonder to see a man coming from a southern state to address a Democratic audience in Boston. But we have heard it argued, seen it published. A petition has been circulated for signers announcing that there was an incompatibility between the sections, that the Union had been tried long enough, and that it had proved to be necessary to separate from those sections of the Union in which the curse of slavery existed. Ah, those modern saints, so much wiser than our fathers, have discovered an incompatibility requiring separation in those relations which existed when the Union was formed. They have found the remnants only of a diversity which existed when South Carolina sent her rice to Boston, and Maryland and Pennsylvania and New York brought in their funds for her relief. They have found the remnants only, for from that day to this, the difference between the people has been constantly decreasing, and the necessity for union, which then arose in no small degree from the diversity of product and soil and climate, has gone on increasing, both by the extension of our own territory and the introduction of new tropical products, so that whilst the difference between the people has diminished, the diversity in the products has increased, and that motive for union which your fathers found exists in a higher degree than it did when they resolved to be united. Diversity there is of occupation, of habits, of education, of character, but it is not of that extreme kind which proves incompatibility or even incongruity. For your Massachusetts man, when he comes to Mississippi, adopts our opinions and our institutions, and frequently becomes the most extreme Southern man among us. As our country has extended, as new products have been introduced into it, the free trade which blesses our union has been of increasing value. But this accursed agitation, this offensive, injurious intermeddling with the affairs of other people, and this alone it is that will promote a desire in the mind of anyone to separate these great and growing states. The seeds of dissension may be sown by invidious reflections. Men may be goaded by the constant attempt to infringe upon rights and to traduce community character, and in the resentment which follows, it is not possible to tell how far the case may be driven. I therefore plead to you now to arrest a fanaticism which has been evil in the beginning and must be evil to the end. You may not have the numerical power requisite, and those at a distance may not understand how many of you there are desirous to put a stop to the course of this agitation. But let your language and your acts teach them to appreciate a faithful, self-denying majority. I have learned, since I have been in New England, the vast mass of true state rights Democrats are to be found within its limits, though not represented in the halls of Congress. Davis was delighted by the warm reception he received everywhere he went in the Northeast. While he was addressing fellow Democrats, this was at a time when the party was in disarray and losing its cohesion as a national party. As his biographer William J. Cooper writes, Davis saw a brighter sky and felt a firmer foundation beneath my feet. Looking back after 3 months, he found no reason to abandon his hopefulness. He wrote to Franklin Pierce that his tour persuaded him temperate, true men could make a great difference by visiting in opposite sections. He had discovered that the difference is less than I had supposed. While Davis in New England experienced a renewed conviction about the American future, he was taken aback by a totally unanticipated assault on him by Southern states' rights zealots. Certain reports of Davis's remarks aboard the Joseph Whitney had him proclaiming the inviolability of the Union, which violated the states' rights creed. But though Davis certainly praised the blessings of the Union, he never declared it inviolable, for he had long believed in the right of secession. What particularly infuriated some fire eaters was that he had mocked trifling politicians in the South or in the North or in the West who wanted to divide the country. They are like the mosquitoes around the ox. They annoy, but they cannot wound and never kill. Long after the Civil War, Robert Barnwell Rhett was still bitterly citing those reported remarks in his memoir as evidence of Davis's shakiness on secession. Rhett's Charleston Mercury newspaper would prove a most annoying mosquito indeed during Davis's presidency of the Confederate States of America. As always, I've got additional context in the companion post at my website. Click the link in the description below. And help this little channel keep growing by hitting that like button, subscribing, commenting with your thoughts, and sharing with anyone who might be interested. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.